Okay, everybody seems to love giants. And when they discovered the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Book of Giants was among the Dead Sea Scrolls. It was a book about giants. And that goes way back. It was buried during the time of Jesus, basically. Now, and it also references the giants which are found in Genesis 6, 1 through 4. Also the same as the books of Enoch. Jubilees. A whole batch of them all relate to this same book of giants. I'm going to go through it with you. And I'm going to talk to you about these giants that were actually, no question, they were here. And apparently they did exactly what they said they did. They came down, they were supposed to be watchers, which were supposed to be the guides for humans how to live a peaceful life. And instead, they decided they were going to come down and basically have sex parties with the women, because they could change themselves into anything they want. And all these gods that came down, you didn't see any out of shape gods. They were all buff looking, and they came down and they had sex parties. And the kids, taking on angel DNA, grew to be miles tall. And that's exactly what it says in Enoch and all of them. These Nephilim, Rephaim, Gibberin, earthly half-breed races that fought against God. And Enoch calls them bastards. So that's just in the Dead Sea Scrolls about the Book of Giants. But they all had them. They were everywhere. They had about the giants, Apollodorus, Hesiod, Ovid, Herodotus, all of them. All of them that wrote about the ancient histories. Josephus. And the giants, I believe, carried on until not all that long ago, and then were destroyed because they were intrusive. They were probably problems, and at the time of the Great Flood, they were pretty much wiped off the earth, except it appears that there was still some around. I have to believe that. But again, I don't know. We need to search this. But this text has been dated to before the 2nd century BC. So this is a very old text. And it's from the Book of Enoch primarily. And Jubilees and all the ones that said there was giants. And they were in communication with God. Enoch walked with God and still does, apparently. He lived to be 365 years old, which is not old. Back then, they were 900,000 years old. He lived to be 365, and God said, come on up here, I want you to be with me. And up he went. And that was the end of Enoch. Well, that was the beginning of Enoch, really, because God took him to be basically his concierge, I guess. Now, this is all obviously laughed at. This is the Book of Enoch, and he talks about the giants being over 2 miles tall. And he's talking. Here's how it starts here. It's a religious text ascribed by tradition to Enoch, who ended up going with God, who was the father of Methuselah. He lived to be 969 years old, and the great-grandfather of Noah. Well, everybody knows who Noah was, Noah's flood. So they passed down the information to Noah, get ready, this is going to happen. The case has been set. And Noah heeded that information. The Book of Enoch contains unique material on the origins of demons, Nephilim, and why some angels fell from heaven, and an explanation of why the Genesis flood happened. Well, we know why. It was because they sinned so gravely against humanity. And they had giants, and the giants were so hungry they were eating each other, and the kids, and all of humanity. It was a disaster. It was really bad. It's apparently, from what I can glean from these ancient texts. Wow. So Enoch is not considered canonical. They just don't believe it. And this is like 200 BC, 300 to 200 BC. It was in the Dead Sea Scrolls in the Qumran caves. And this was just discovered in 1955, I think. And these are all the things in here. So 5 quite distinct major sections. The Book of the Watchers, the Book of the Parables of Enoch, astronomical book about the luminaries, which are gods, Book of Dream Visions, and Epistle of Enoch. I've read some of this, and it seems I can't discount any of it. I think God took Enoch. Well, hold on a second. Here it is right here. The Bible states God took Enoch. The New Testament confirms through Hebrews 11.5 that by faith Enoch was translated or taken away. I guess he was taken away as light, transitioned into light, so that he did not see death and was not found on earth, which is understood by most Christian traditions to mean he was taken to heaven. This divine intervention is described as a unique reward for his faithful walk with God. So God was appreciative of Enoch intervening basically between God and the fallen angels. Enoch was like an intermediary. The divine intervention. In summary, the Bible teaches God took Enoch to heaven as a direct and extraordinary act of divine favor, allowing him to bypass physical death due to his exceptionally faithful life and intimate relationship with God. Now, I can't discount any of this stuff anymore. I would have laughed at all this stuff long ago, but not anymore. All right, I'm going to talk about the Nabateans. They're the ones that are associated to Petra. Now, it says the first mention of the Nabateans dates to 1312-ish BC. I don't know where they came up with that exact date, when they were attacked by Sela, or perhaps at Petra, without success. All right, and this is all this Petra area, and I know exactly what this stuff is. And they carved into this stuff when it was still kind of moist. Now they're saying 312, maybe, but that's when it would have been attacked. So it probably dates back at least a few hundred years prior to that. This must have taken some effort to do this. And they did it all over the place. I mean, that's the Petra treasury. This thing is enormous. And you see these layers of rock, mud, clay, whatever you want to call them. I know what they are. They are tissue from a giant creature. And this is probably a heart. Same thing here. All these creatures died in a great flood. And the great flood, according to Velikovsky, was 1300 BC. So this is not, I don't know. And all these people wanted to rule the world after the reset. And there probably wasn't a whole lot of people. I don't know, there's a lot to consider when you start to think about, the Great Flood. If it just happened 1300 BC, we got a whole new way of looking at things. And that's what Velikovsky said, and that's what the whole rest of the world said. And it makes sense to me, because my stuff is right on the surface. And I have body parts from giants. They've been DNA tested. Some of them CAT scanned, the ones that are small enough. I've shown a hair follicle 1,000 times, 2 inches wide. Some creature had a big hair. So we need to start over again. And Petra, I'm going to show you all of the buildings from Petra. They're made literally, I'm not kidding you, out of muscle. I'm going to show it to you. You can't miss it. All right. My opinion is that everything is made of biology. The entire Earth, The Nabateans took advantage of that biology, which was muscle tissue, to build Petra, which I'll show you right now. It's made of muscle sarcomeres. Okay, you're mud fossil people. I don't have to tell you any more than that. I want you to look at what you see. Look for patterns. You see that? And then you see these layers, layer, layer, layer. I don't know if you can see those or not. All right, and you see these big gouges running up through there. What's going on with that? And why are all these layered? And why does it look like we have white and red mixed together? As you can see. This is the treasury, which is what everybody knows Petra as. This is huge. And look at the stripes. Look at the blocks. And look at the cuts going this way. And this is a complete channel here. You call it whatever you want. I call it a channel. And that's another channel going that way. And there's another channel coming out this way. And these are more muscle sarcomeres. And this was the vein, the artery, that supported the muscle. You need a ton of blood. And the earth is nothing more than gigantic creatures. And they use this almost like putty, chiseled into it. I'll show you up close. The muscle sarcomeres, it's just literally undeniable. And once you get inside, it's just nothing but biology. So don't forget, this is Petra. This is the whole shooting match. It's nothing but muscle. Now at the top up here, I believe is where it broke off from like the tendon or, I don't know, bone, whatever. Something happened there. But you see how many layers there are in tissue? It's absolutely stunning. And this has the connective tissue, which it's going to have. And as a matter of fact, here's the picture right up above Petra. It's all got connective tissue in there because it has to. You have to have connective tissue in your muscle, they just fall apart. The muscle is like some polar jelly that pulls. And here's what the sarcomeres look like. These little blocks are sarcomeres, and that's the gooey red stuff which runs out in watery conditions, and it powders out in dry conditions like on Mars, because they're on Mars too. And these are muscle sarcomeres. Can I prove that? Absolutely I can. Here they are right here. This is on Mars. These are the muscle sarcomeres. There's the red blood, and there's the artery, and there's the vein. That's muscle. And there's no rivulets here, there's no water been touching this because Mars doesn't have water on it. And there's inside the treasury. That's just nothing but, go to a butcher and ask them. They'll tell you that is nothing but biology. Okay, this is from Atom Central, and it's slow motion what happens in an atomic bomb blast. They got all kinds of things they're setting up around these buildings to see what these sensors pick up. So all of this stuff they'll clear out, and then they take and shoot the bomb off. Now here's what happens. Don't forget, this is Atom Central. All right, now I got it set at 25%, so I got no sound. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to understand. Here goes. Boom, they set it off. You see how it's just nothing but burning. There's not, look, I'm going to just stop it for 1 second. All right, there's nothing but burning. Everything that it hit is burning. And you see how black the background gets? There's a lot of interesting things to look at here. Now, all of a sudden, the dark particles come, because this is nothing more than the white particles that are the gluey ones that glue around the outside. You know what? I don't think I did show you. Hold on. All right. Every proton is made basically of a certain number of these particles. They become stable. I can't tell you why at this point, but the crust around that central core makes this sort of this pretty stable. However, it can share some of these, or it can shed some of these, or it can attract some of these. And all of those different states are different isotopes. But the key here is that the black will always go to the center. This is what really confused me. I never thought they could separate, but they can. The white can come apart from the black. I've shown it. There's no question about it. Now, this is a dipole electron flood theory. It's up on the internet. And it's only a couple minutes. And these are only two particles that exist. And here's the standard model versus our model, yada, yada, yada. A couple of changes in everything. You got to start from the reality. They don't, and it just goes so deep. It goes into the enzymes and half-lives and how the chemistry of life works. And without the enzymes, you're dead. And if you don't have the bacteria to make the enzymes, you're not going to get the chemistry, because the chemistry turns into ribosomes. Nothing sits on its own. There is nothing that stays on its own. As soon as you start down a research path, if you're a real researcher, a scientist, you just keep going. And I tell you, there's just no place you can't go, because there is so much that needs to be looked at again. You see that? A butcher will look at that and say, yeah, of course, that's a meat. And that's connective tissue or fat, one or the other. I'd say probably connective tissue. And these are all, look, that's where blood once ran. All right, so this is Petra inside the treasury. Now, once again, here's the treasury. Above, it's like this, which is the connective tissue. Below, it's like this. They carved into that artery, and that was an artery. It was just an artery there. It was just nothing but red blood. And that's what all of those blood vessels were, those pathways, or whatever you want to call them. You see it? And that fed that whole network. That's how arteries and blood vessels and so forth work. And you have to have that to support these sarcomeres. All day long, until it died. When? I don't know. I don't know whether this was part of the original Earth or this happened as the Earth was being wrenched by Venus. I don't know. See up there? That's all connective tissue right above this. It's fully understood. I mean, any anatomist has to agree with this. And it's being avoided because it's spectacular. But this is not unique. These are muscle sarcomeres. I showed you what they look like. Those little blocks are single muscle sarcomere layers. And this is just nothing but blood once. It's all carved up. And they actually put all these little holes in to release the moisture from here. It was probably almost like, nice and easy and chiseling, and, because they can work very well with clay, and that is virtually nothing more than a real heavy-duty clay. Blood in a clot is nothing more than mud and clay. And they did a fabulous job. Obviously, they had some serious skills. Where they got those serious skills and were able to do this from, I don't know. And why would they have to have doorways this high? I don't know. Because a person standing comes up to about here. And you see that? That's where the blood settled. The heavier stuff settles at the bottom. So that's Petra. And it shows all the same sarcomeres that are up in Mars. All right? They say this continue over millions of years, these layered. No, that is a dead creature's body. Same thing as like on Earth. And it happened when Venus hit Earth, wiped out as much of the giants as it could, and then it hit Mars and totally wiped Mars out. Look at this. You see those sarcomeres? These are also sarcomeres. You see these little things? I commented on this. This is at Deladian Courts, Donegal, Ireland. This is where, Giant's Causeway and all that stuff is. This is what it is. And this right here is ripped. That right there is ripped muscle sarcomeres. They don't do that unless they're ripped. You see how perfect they are? And they're squared off and squared off and squared off and squared off and squared off. All of them are perfectly. When you see a rip like that, that's an injury. It's just the craziest thing that this guy posted an injured, eroded muscle sarcomere. Isn't that crazy? And I'll show you, this is what happens in a heart attack victim. Identical. No difference whatsoever. No difference whatsoever. And you end up with these tears. Watch, here's a heart attack victim. Right there. There's the tears. And these are the little tiny slots. All those little bitty slots. And then the gooey stuff runs out in the, it's very fluid. That's the key. This gooey stuff is fluid. The other stuff is just never erodes. It's connective tissue. So you just saw this. You just saw that. You just saw this. It's the same stuff. And that's the rip of, I don't know, maybe it was a heart attack. Maybe, I don't know. I'll tell you, things don't get any crazier than they are now. You saw it was a rip. You saw it. And the rest was these little tiny slits. And they're up on Mars. I think I showed you, but I will again. Where's Mars? Mars, Earth to Mars. There it is right there. I know I showed you. These are all the same stuff. But up there, there's no rain to create little rivulet patterns. That's why I know 100% certain this is Mars. And I just follow Curiosity and all of that stuff they did right from day one. And I reported to NASA, you got life biology that was up there. It's dead now. And the next thing I know, they funded Yale to do a study about my kind of fossilization. Only Yale won't look at the actual facts like this, being body tissue. You see those squares? Just take your time. These blocks are supposed to be glued together with a slurp of mucus on top of them. When that creature was alive, it could do all this sort of stuff and stay impenetrable. Well, now everything's dried out, run off. And what you end up with is this layer, which is the, basement layer of skin, let's say. And below that, you got all these tissue layers. And here, the whole thing was gouged out by Venus. I know I've talked about this 100 times, and I'm going to continue to until they start to take this for serious. These blocks are nothing more than these that have separated. They're no longer stuck, and they are monstrous. Now, I'm not sure who posted this. This was a picture sent to me, but I know Desert Drifter was doing this. He unfortunately was killed in a car accident. Terrible. But this whole layer right here, I think, is the fluid-filled highway. You see how it's more or less separated here and almost hollow and start caving in, basically? That would have been the first point of contact, which is where you want your enzymes and bacteria to fight back before they can get through to penetrate your good tissue. It's just kind of large-scale biology, that's all. Don't forget, Asteroid Bennu got this sample back here for a couple of years. It's got membranes and it's got sarcomeres. Precisely what I showed you. Plus, it has the exact same chemistry that biology has. There it was, I just showed you sarcomeres. It's exactly the same as this. No difference whatsoever. And this is on Mars. And it's exactly the same as this. Don't forget, this right here, sarcomeres in between membranes, which they call the phosphate surprise, or phospholipids. And these are the sarcomeres, and these are the ropes that wrap around the heart, because this is from a heart. And so is psyche a heart. Look them up. Look them up. I've shown them over and over and over. So I think I've supported my case very well. And Mars, Bennu, hearts here on Earth, the Earth itself, Petra as an artery, comets in space being hip joints. This falls exactly, and having arteries which blow out here. It just is exactly the same stuff that would blow out if it was cooked on a grill. This is a little different. This is the slippery stuff on the tendons, the fibers of the tendons, which is not blood. This is blood boiling off of here from an artery. This is more or less tendony stuff, which has it has slurp to it. It's got to have fluid, and it's cooking off as it gets hit with the solar radiation. This goes back to 2050, and I got a same thing. I got a hold of NASA, and I said, "Hey, you got biology everywhere." And of course, I never got anything of any value back. But I mean, I didn't want any value. I just wanted them to acknowledge that this is what it is. And I had my stuff DNA tested, CAT scan, all that stuff by this time. So I wasn't just making guesses. And here's Mars slammed by Venus, and Earth getting slammed with radiation pushed into the Earth. So now we have uranium way up on the, and all of that high-end energetic particles. I have evidence to support every word I'm saying. There was giants here on this earth, and I'm going to do the Book of Giants. I have to go through that to see what they actually had to say. In other words, I breezed over a little of this, a little of that, but I have no idea, to be perfectly honest with you. It's too much for the average mind to wrap around to see it from all sides. It's like I had somebody, the closest person to me in my life, today, and I was showing this, wherever it was the blocks here coming down. This one here. And I'm holding this up, and I'm saying, you see these? You see that? That's these layers here. You see that? This is just so huge you can see it, but they're here. You just can't see it. It's just they're just too small. But you can see all these layers. And I said, do you see that? And the answer was, and I said, do you see these? Do you see that? The answer was, all I see is rocks. I said, you got to be kidding me. And it didn't go real well after that. But I believe this is the fluid-filled highway right there. And now the fluid's out, and she's dropping. That's my guess right now. And it's based on that. These are the blocks that are just falling apart. And you could actually test this, I'm sure, because there's going to be certain chemistry where the tight junctions are versus the adherons and the gap. So all of them have. There's different names for all the stuff in here, but it's basically there's different chemistry. And I can actually see the lines on those blocks from, I think it was Desert Drifter. All right, thank you, my friends. And I'm going to, anyway, let me just wrap it up quick to be sure that you didn't miss anything. It is what it is. And this is the chemistry coming back from Comet 67P. It's all biology. Hydrocarbons, iron oxides from blood, and space smells like steak. We need to take a whole new idea. And they have now, the experts now claim, yes, they agree Earth was hit by something, a huge something, but we were a dry, dusty planet. No. And it brought water and life to planet Earth. No. Planet Earth was out of control, and it was sent to wipe that out of control stuff out. This is what they can't accept. And we got to stand up. If you believe in God and Jesus Christ, and I darn sure do now, I can tell you that. I never did. I thought it was just ridiculous. They were weak-minded people that just needed something to claw onto, hoping for a better existence after you die, because everybody dies. You're not going to take it with you. That just ain't going to happen. So, where do you go? If you read the ancient text, there you can go really bad and you can go really good. What dictates? I'm seeing it as how well you please God. If you're an honest and you really dig your heels in and do the best you can to support God, I think you're going to be favored. It just appears to be that way. Just as Enoch was taken to heaven by God, he says, "You're my guy, come on." He was only 365 years old. They used to live to 1,000. I got so much evidence, nobody can stand up and talk to me about it. That's the problem. And I'm not trying to put anybody down, but this is exactly what Velikovsky wrote. He wrote it, he documented it from every culture on the face of the planet. And that's where Venus erupted from. It said the fiery comet was born from the feared god Jupiter. And they could change sexes. And that is a vagina. And I've shown that many, many times. Now, out it came and it whacked Earth and created all that extra energetic uranium. It bounces off of Earth, and Earth gets huge floods, disasters, burning, volcanoes, Earth is wrenched, all of that nonsense from that impact. Now, what happens after that impact? Well, it bounced off, and it went out to Mars, and it whacked Mars right there. And took Mars' magnetic field. It probably took a lot of ours too, but it took everything from Mars, totally killed it, wiped it out. And Mars was considered the god of war. So it wipes Mars completely out. And what happened to Venus? It sucked up all that energy. This is welding arcs. When you weld something, you send energy in. All right, you have an electrode, and you put it here, and it jumps a spark. And there's so much heat between here that if you have the right welding rod, in which you need the right kind of metal to do work with what you're going to weld, that little gap between them, it just causes a little puddle. And you go, well, this just happened like bam, because this spins backwards, and I think that's got something to do with it. I'm sure I talked about all this stuff before, but I believe this was one impact site, and these are things coming this way, because it wouldn't go this way and then come back this way. I don't think. I think this was an impact site, and some of this came this way, and this another time there was an impact site, and everything flew out that way. So there are two different impact sites. Maybe. That's the best I can draw out of that. But this is exactly what was written in the ancient text. The feared god Jupiter gave birth to the fiery comet, which ended up being Venus. It hit Earth to wipe out the giants. Then it hit Mars to kill Mars, the god of war. And that was only about 800 BC is what was written. And the crazy thing is, the god of war, who is Mars, is dead here as a planet. It has no more troops. All of its guys are done. Is dead. And who shows up in Rome at exactly the same time is Mars. He was the god of Rome. He shows right up around 800 BC, exactly what Velikovsky puts it at. And he takes up residence and becomes Romulus and Remus, and, try to take over the whole world here. It's born in, I guess, in the genetics. He's a god of war. Now, where is he now? I don't know. Of that, I can't tell you. But Venus killed him, his body. They don't die, so he's got to be somewhere. And I think he just actually showed up in Rome and came down as a god and was their protectorate. Everybody else hated him. The whole world hated Mars because he was a god of war. Brutal, violent, bloodthirsty. That's what they wrote. Now, that's all I'm saying. I'm not trying to offend you. Anyway, Venus dispatched him. So he doesn't have the troops that he would have to take over the whole universe, maybe. It's these celestial wars can get so deep when you start to think. I'm telling you, my mind is just boiling 90% of the time. When I look at this stuff and then try to explain it, and I can explain it now. That's the crazy thing. I can explain it. And for a long time. And the refusal for reality is so extreme. That's the mind blower for me. I thought this would be, wow, let's look into this. No, absolutely not. Complete silence, dead silence, rejection. Same thing that happened to Velikovsky. And I'm proving his claims because everybody had these same stories. This is not hidden information. It's just there was never any proof. Who could believe 2 miles tall? Well, I can believe it. They were way tall. Devil's Tower is a Achilles heel. That's all it is. And this here, on top of Raleigh, North Carolina, you can't even see. Raleigh, North Carolina is about this big inside of that. We're talking big things. Big things. There's a heart in space, which is called Psyche. It's 140 or 177 miles across. It's a heart. And the valves are coming out of it. And the vein, the tubing and everything else.